Hello and welcome. India is a big market for global capability center, or they were once called global captive centers. Essentially, large organizations with highly skilled people serving motherships in North America, Europe, and these are typically large Fortune 100 or Fortune 500 companies. So the big question now is, with all these skill, talent and expertise that's been created here, where will it go next? And also, do they face more fundamental challenges as technology itself takes big leaps? I'm putting that question to Eric Simonson, Managing Partner at Everest, a consulting company in the technology space. Eric, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you.
So, an overview, right? So, if we've seen, let's say, some of the large capability or captive centers setting up space, and these are all the biggest names in corporate America or corporate world, and building these capabilities. Where does that stand today? That accumulation of knowledge and deep expertise, where does that stand today, and how effectively is it delivering in terms of the final consumer and the final value add?
Yeah, so I think for most companies, it's just become an assumption that the India portion of their business is going to be of significant scale, increasingly do more and more important parts of the work, and needs to be integrated into the overall corporate model. If we look back and oversimplify, say 10 years ago, a lot of it, how companies thought about this was transactional work. So getting things entered, processed, et cetera. 5 years ago, you were starting to see a lot more of, okay, analytics and insights. So it's not just make things flow, it's what does this mean? How can we do for more financial reporting, detect risk, whatever it may be. I think what we're seeing, not everywhere, but it's not at all uncommon now to have organizations looking to India. Yes, you may do those things, but you also are trying to help us change. How do you help us transform digitally? How do you help us transform processes? How do you help us automate things? So it's actually less of a, I have defined the work, how do you help do the work? And rather, how do you help us create a new future and how things operate, how we attack market segments, et cetera.
That's interesting. So if you look at the journey into digital, I mean the absorption of the new skills, whether it's machine learning or artificial intelligence, how do you see that transition happening vis-a-vis the skills and the capabilities in India or countries like India?
So I think it's a huge challenge for everyone. And 4 years or so ago, I think Nasscom in India were somewhat nervous about, okay, how do we get enough of the skills? I think that's well-founded. That's a fair concern. The reality is this is hard everywhere, okay? And I think in a much more concerted way, India has gone after attacking that. And at least the conversations I'm involved in, I don't think India's solved the problem, but I think it's not a disadvantage, in some ways even in an advantaged place. In addition to learning sort of the new digital skills, it's not like the old work stopped. People have more domain knowledge about the businesses, the industries, across the value chains of customer, supply chain, et cetera. And all of those are actually pretty helpful in digital. One level you can think of digital as being, do you know the latest programming language? Another level is, can you reimagine how things should work? And domain knowledge of how things could work or should work is in some ways as important as, do you know Python or some other critical new age technology.
Right, and that's an important point, I guess, which the industry now knows pretty well, is that we are at the same starting point as everyone else when it comes to adoption of the newer technologies or the emerging technologies.
I'd argue ahead, actually,
right.
Because I think India's taken technical skill development very seriously. They've created in the past, people would worry about, hey, how can you support COBOL and mainframe? And India figured out how do you do that, even exporting people to help. So I think the ecosystem is so rich and capable in India, although yes, it has been a challenge and certainly more is required. I think just the raw confidence and resources to go after it is unparalleled.
Right, and when you look at the areas like robotic process automation, and I mean the kind of stuff which could take jobs or eat away some of the jobs, how do you see that? Is that something that's going to affect the ability of either the global captives or capability centers, or even for that matter the IT giants in India, as we stand today?
Yeah, so great question. It has a lot of moving pieces underneath it. I think a fair bit of the conventional wisdom 3 years ago was, hey, what's going to happen to jobs in India, particularly business process oriented? I think indeed tasks will be automated, and in some cases there'll be enough tasks that whole jobs will go away, but often jobs will still exist, they'll just be different. And new tasks that become even new jobs are also emerging, okay? And those are not just to maintain the automations, but rather when you can more efficiently, more consistently customize, serve your clients, you actually can now increase your capabilities and the ROI to do new things in the past you said you couldn't even do. So I think you will see some employment loss, but I think it's not a cliff. It's more of a evolution that's happening as people get more and more oriented towards moving, in some ways, again, what we spoke about earlier, from being master of the transaction to developer of the insight to facilitator of the change. So I think there's some risk and there'll be some painful change and some people won't be able to make it. But I think broadly it's going to be not about job loss, it's going to be about change in work.
Right, and I think to go back to your earlier point, you feel that the resilience and the ability to respond and fight is there.
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
Sufficiently.
Yeah. So initially, a lot of the RPA conversation was, hey, why offshore something if you can automate it and keep it onshore? Okay, and then you'd say, well, what controls how much you can automate? Well, they'd say, well, by definition, automation is doing something for a tail end of work that wasn't built into the core system, and it can be expensive to develop the automation. We'll translate that into an India context. Well, you can more efficiently automate more things, plus often the delivery centers in India, and in particular some of the GCCs at this event, see a lot of how things operate, and they can compare how this geography operates compared to this business unit versus another. They may see how finance is doing things that aren't connected to procurement and supply chain. And they can say, well, this is kind of silly, right? There's duplication, there's artificial complexity. Maybe if we got the data cleaned up in a better way, we could fundamentally change the possibilities of how we could work. So it's going to result, is already resulting, and I think will continue to result in India actually being more of a center of excellence for automation, as opposed to trying to catch up with everyone else.
Right.
And certainly if you look at the leading automation providers, all of them are that big on India.
Okay, last question. You said, the transition from joblessness, or not transition, I'm saying instead of joblessness, it might be change of nature of work.
Yep.
Can you throw some more light on that?
So the typical things we hear are, I had a customer inquiry, and to solve this, I had to historically look in a couple different systems, and I had to then think about how to address that, and then as I got new information, maybe I had to update several different systems. Although at one level all that's simple, it does absorb a lot of kind of human mental bandwidth to know how to get into the systems, how to flip between, how to cut and paste. It could be complex even though it wasn't necessarily sophisticated. Okay? Now, if you can have a tool that helps pull all that information together for you, allows you to make a change in one place that gets propagated, the agent is able to then think about things like, well, why is this person making this change? What else, what is a signal as a further opportunity? Or, wow, I've seen actually 5 of these, which is an unusual thing. I've seen 5 in the last couple of days. Is something going on? Is maybe the website broken, or is there a promotion we haven't heard about? So it basically in some ways frees people's thought process up to work at a higher level. You can potentially extrapolate even beyond that and say, okay, now that we see more what's actually going on, maybe we run more sophisticated analytics on the nature of work, how the channels are behaving differently, and we're going to manage or do things that we, in the past, we're just processing transactions, we weren't looking for patterns. So it's both at the level of kind of freeing up the individual to be doing their interactions with less kind of a mental drag on just making things unnecessarily complicated, but also then allowing people to have the data and insights to look at the flows and patterns of work to spot new opportunities or challenges.
Right, that's an optimistic note and a good note to end on. Thank you so much, Eric, for speaking with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.